Hello, everyone. Welcome to Yield Today. I'm here with Brenden Kumarasamy. I'm sorry, man. Brenden
Good.
Kumarasamy. Wow, You know what? I'm sorry. Brenden Kumarasamy with MasterTalks. Is that right?
You got it, man. Great to be here.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on, and let's just jump right into the college vibe because that is where you started MasterTalks. You had done a lot of different work and found out from doing these competitions for speaking that you could coach other people. Just bring us back. How did that come about?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head there, Dallin. So what happened, and great to be here as well. So what happened was when I was in college, I never really wanted to be a communication professional. I never even knew that was a thing. So I studied accounting. That was my major. That's what I thought I was going to do with my life. Just be an accountant for the next, 4 decades, make good money, do numbers, and that's it. But what happened was, during my journey, I started doing these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports for nerds. So while other guys my age were like playing rugby or football or some other sport you probably wouldn't see me playing, I did presentations competitively, and that's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, I started coaching the other students on how to communicate ideas, and I just accidentally got really good at speaking. So I said, I should probably make YouTube videos for people who can't afford a coach. So I just started making videos in my mom's basement, and then Master Talk just turned into something I never could have imagined.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I did DECA in high school, and that's where my light bulb moment with business came in. Was I was a state finalist with that sort of by accident, and a lot of that was I wanted to talk with this a little bit about this with you. Is I was really stressed out like the day before, and then I got it out and started like reading my entire paper to my roommate that was like there at the competition. And I don't know why, Brenden, but it just completely helped me just get excited and everything. So what's your thoughts there with helping people just to get excited about what they have to say and have more confidence in their speech?
That's awesome, Dallin. You're like one in 100 hosts that I do interviews with that knows what a case competition is. This is the first time I've heard of somebody else saying, yeah, I did DEC. I was like, oh, you know what that is. So a lot of people don't know what cases are, but yeah, absolutely. So essentially, what I recommend, which I think is better advice for, let's say, the general public who doesn't do like a DECA or a case competition-esque environment, is to build momentum. Or like any other skill, let's say we learned how to ride on a bike. We didn't sit there for 7 hours and read books on how to ride a bike. We just got on the bike. It had 4 wheels on it, and we tried figuring it out. And then we got good at it, and then we started doing a 2-wheeler, and then we got better at that too. So it's the same analogy with speaking. For me, communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time, Dallin. So one of those balls is smiling, one is body language, one is storytelling. So for me, the question has just been like, what's the easiest ball to juggle? And for me, the easiest one is the random word exercise. Just pick a word like cup or phone or home and create random presentations out of thin air. And this helps you deal with uncertainty. If you can make sense out of nonsense, you can make sense out of anything. So if you just do that a few times a day, if you could talk about avocados for 30 seconds, you could talk about anything for 30 seconds.
I love that. Yeah, it does start with those like little micro wins. For me, doing my gaming channel way back in the day, it started with just talking about what was happening in the game, like Mario is jumping, and I don't really know what else to say. But then it slowly came into like I was talking about things that were happening in school and creating like this story arc. And I think your brain learns this stuff over time when we get more of what we repeat. And so I'm sure that's a lot of what you say with your clients is you help them to get some of those initial wins, and it gets kind of addictive. I heard you say that on another podcast. You have so many podcasts. So it's like anybody that has you on, there's literally no excuse because you have like hundreds and hundreds, So it's like you can go so deep on this guy. But like you said in one of your appearances, like I want my things to be so good. It's sort of like crack cocaine. And I mean, I know that's like obviously a really bad drug, but this is what everybody is kind of doing these days. Like, let's make this as addictive as we possibly can. So, yeah, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure, Dallin. Yeah, clearly I do too many of these, but yeah, that's the life. So your point, which I'll spin a little bit, is in the sense of success, right? So we're all addicted to, the soft drinks and the junk food, and I'm definitely guilty of the junk food too. I need to have my cheat meal from time to time, but if we tried getting addicted to success, right, finding ways in how we can get addicted to progress, that's why I've always seen communication, especially in my field, because a lot of the people who teach communication in my industry are really boring. Right? They go, oh, like the fear of communication, they're like PhDs in comms, and you're like, oh my god. Like somebody who's a single mother with 7 kids doesn't care about, like, doesn't focus on this. She just worries about the pains in her life. So for me, the question has been, to your point, how could I make communication training and practicing communication make it as addictive as cocaine? So people want to keep doing it. People have fun doing it, and they have so much fun. Not that crack is fun, but you get the idea that they just want to keep getting better at it. That's why for me, it's not about saying, let's overcome our fears. It's more about saying, let's just do the random word exercise 100 times before doing anything else. And then what happens is when you do it 25 times or even 5 times, you get really good at it pretty quickly. You go, oh, this is fun. Like, I'm really good at this now. But after 100, you feel like a badass, and then you want to go on to the next tip. And that's how you build momentum in the skill.
That's good, yeah. Something you said on the Mark Savant podcast is that sometimes you'll literally, like, have a bunch of these questions. Like, you'll re-listen to your episode and be like, what if I were to ask myself that question again? I'm like, shoot, this guy's going deep. So I was like, we gotta get him on. So you're thinking very far ahead. You're like, there's people that are gonna listen to these in the future, and you want to set yourself up so you're slowly getting better. Kind of bring us to that strategy. What's that look like?
For sure, Dal. I think out of every host that has interviewed me, you probably have done the most homework, it looks like. So I appreciate it, man. It's very kind. But yes, you're right. You know, for me, what I always tell my clients is there's 2 funnels. Right? The first funnel is that what gets you clients. And the second funnel is what changes the course of humanity. So going back to Dale Carnegie, because I want to be this generation's Dale Carnegie, that's my goal. So how do we backtrack? How do we reverse engineer that? So let's start with the challenge that Dale Carnegie had when he was alive. The challenge is, even if he had great books and great content, the best way to speak is to hear somebody speak. So there's no videotapes of the guy communicating, delivering a workshop, guesting on a podcast, doing YouTube videos, for the simple reason that none of that technology existed back then. Like, none of it existed. Whereas me, I'm really fortunate where I got the expertise. I learned the trick of the gift of gab really young, right? I started coaching executives when I was probably 20, 21, and I'm 26 currently. So for me, the question has always been, when at the end of my life, what are the experiences that I want to create? I call this TBCCTEL. I got this from one of my coaches, which stands for the best communication coach that ever lived. That's my focus in my life. So how do I recreate that in my day-to-day? And part of that is guesting on 1,000 podcasts. Not because I need business. It's more so because today most of my business is word of mouth. But it's more to practice. So when I get those massive opportunities like I had last December, I guess on like a top 300 podcast or something, I can go on that show and crush it, right? But it's not, once again, it's not just to get clients. Sure, some of it is that. But it's more about saying, like, this interview will live throughout the rest of time. And that's what a lot of people are missing, I think, in thought leadership, is they don't think about the vision. Like, I'll give you a simple one that I've never said on a podcast, which is like Kobe Bryant's interview with Lewis Howes, right, the School of Greatness host, who's like my hero. So Lewis interviewed Kobe before he died. So that interview will live throughout the rest of time because it was one of the few interviews Kobe ever did where he talked about love and affection and desire and all that stuff, where you can't get from an NBA interview. So that's what I mean by these things can really last a long time.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate you diving deeper into that because it's true. We have such a powerful opportunity for anybody that's building a business or anything like that to appear on podcasts. I will say some of the Brenden bug got on me. I applied to be on 7 podcasts this morning, which, yeah, I was like, I'll let them come to me. But then it was like, you know what? I'm just going to put myself out there. I know I love doing them. I always learn stuff from the hosts and stuff. And I've already learned there's some, it's like not the best fit. But then there's other ones where it's like, it's sort of like being on a basketball team that's like great for like one game and then leaving or something. It's like you just leave charged up and everything. Wanted to jump really quickly. I forgot the name of the guy, but you said that one of your favorite CEOs is the guy of Charity Water.
Scott Harrison, yeah.
How long have you been like following his journey? Like, did you find him from a YouTube ad, or and then you just followed him, or what kind of went there?
Yeah, so the backstory behind Scott Harrison was when I was 20, I was pretty selfish. Like, I focused a lot more on case competitions. Sure, I was coaching other people, but it was mostly my selfish benefit because I wanted them to win competitions so I'd feel good, right? So it was a lot more about just us winning. And then I stumbled upon Scott's work through Gary Vee, which we all know, Gary Vaynerchuk. So he's been a long-time donor of Scott's charity. And I hated charities until I learned about Scott, except like one other charity. So I'm watching this interview that Gary Vee has done with Scott. He's interviewed the guy like 2 or 3 times on his channel. And Gary tells this story about how Scott convinced him that he was wrong. And I was like, Gary Vee never admits that he's wrong ever. So I need to listen to this story. So basically what happened was Scott got introduced to Gary through a guy named Chris Sacca, who's like a billionaire. He's a very famous tech investor. He's invested in like Uber or Twitter, like very successful. And then they're at a jacuzzi, and Chris is introducing Scott to, and Chris is a massive donor of charity water. And Gary's looking at Scott and he's going, look, I don't have time. I don't want to give back money right now. He's being honest. He's like, look, I'll do it later in life. I want to buy the jets. Like, that's my focus. And Scott told him, Gary, you could do that like everyone else does, or you could donate a little bit of what you have so you can enjoy the fruits of your labor and your give back during your life, not after your life is over. And Gary Vee changed his mind. And when that happened, which was one of the few instances I've seen of him changing his mind, I felt I needed to study Scott Harrison. So I started watching a bunch of his interviews, tried poking holes into his charity, and I couldn't find any holes. I was like, oh, this guy's running like a pretty tight ship. And then I realized that it wasn't that I didn't trust charities, I just didn't trust the people running charities and the models that they ran, and I really trusted him. So he became my mission in a lot of ways. So before MasterTalks started, Dallin, my focus in life was just making a lot of money as an executive and donating a lot of money to charity work. That was my initial goal. But anyways, Scott, and then life had other plans for me, but Scott basically taught me the value of helping other people. And there's a great quote in the book, too. His book called Thirst. And the quote is, the goal is not to live forever, but rather create something that will.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. I definitely need to give that book a read. I've dibbled and dabbled, and I just finished a book called The Boy Who Runs, and it's about Julius Akon and how he made like a charity helping out kids that were starving and stuff like that. And it's pretty cool, like the different stories and how it can like echo through time. What are some of the things that you do on a daily basis, Brenden, that are creating like the echoes that you want down the road? Kind of going into what we were already talking about, but more like your daily habits, how many podcasts you're reaching out to, and your reflection and everything.
For sure, Dallin. So for me, it comes down to 3 main KPIs. Actually, let me start from the beginning, because you've done a lot of homework on me. So let me deep dive in a way that I don't deep dive on other shows, because I usually keep it surface level. So it starts with the base, which is what my coach Vamsi says, what are my 3 priorities? So the 3 priorities that you can do on your own, as well as your audience can do, is if you could only achieve 3 things in your life, what do you want to achieve in your life? And you could do nothing else. So I'll answer that question for the purposes of clarity, which I rarely do, which is number 1, TBCCTEL. I want to be the best communication coach that ever lived. Not just for my own ego, because some of it is for my own ego, because it keeps my life interesting. But the other piece is to go, like, the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl who can't afford a communication coach. So I need to provide free resources for her, because the guys who are doing better than me in this business, there's probably 5% of the industry right now who are doing better than me. Most of them are 30 years older than me. They don't care about social media. They already have all the big contracts. They already make millions of dollars a year. They don't care. So that's the first piece. I really want to empower every genius of our society so that Elon Musk should not be growing up being a terrible speaker. That's just unacceptable to me. Like, if I could coach him for 45 minutes, I'd change his life. Like, it'd be so easy for me to remove his ums and ahs. He just doesn't want the help anymore because he doesn't care. So that's number 1. The second thing that I want in life is to have a family, right? I want to be married and have kids. I'm single currently, but I don't really want to be in a relationship in my 20s because I don't want to lose the window on MasterTalk. So I want to get the mission out of the way. That's why I'm banging out podcasts. I'm doing all these different things so I can get to the mission faster. So in my 30s, I can cruise a little bit more. I'll still be guns on, Dallin, but I won't have the anxiety of saying, oh my God, am I going to make the New York Times list? Am I going to get on TED? Am I going to get on Joe Rogan? Like, that'll already be done, right? So I can just focus on my family, enjoy life, and not be stressed about the impact I'm trying to create. And the third thing is to make my family multimillionaires, specifically the other members of my family. Not by forcing them to start a business, not by having them start a side hustle, by just forcing them to all invest $1,000 a month in an S&P 500 index so that they all become successful. Just do what rich people do. Like, you don't have to make $1 million a year, make $50,000 a year if you want to be an English teacher, but contribute $1,000 a month, live with your family, so that when you're 65, because my parents had no retirement savings. I'm taking care of them, which is totally fine, but there's no guarantee anyone's going to take care of us. And your net worth's going to be $5-6 million at the end of your life. You could just keep doing that. So that's the three things. If I get those three things done, then I'll consider my life complete. So that's the base. And then from that base, it goes back to your question on what are the daily habits. So part of TBCCTEL is guesting on the best podcasts in the world, having the best clients, and having the biggest social media brand. That's kind of the biggest three things. There's a lot of other nuances. We could totally do a part 2 if you want. You can nerd out over this for 60 minutes. So then I just look at those three things. So what am I doing to get more clients? Okay, sure, I could guest on podcasts, but I don't really get that much business from pods. This is more just to add value and help people. So I'm going to do more word of mouth, get into higher and higher levels of community so I can scale up the practice. So the second thing is social. Okay, social media, I'm doing well, but I'm still not a tier 1 yet. So I need to keep pushing myself. So that means posting on Reels 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a day instead of 1. And I'm only doing 1 right now, so I'm being a little lazy. And then the third piece is going, okay, how do I get the best clients? Okay, no, we already talked about clients. So how do I get on the best podcast? So that means 2 things. One is outbounding like crazy. I think I have the craziest outbound system in the world right now. I think we've outreached like tens of thousands of podcasts. That's how I've guested on some of the best shows in the world and keeping track of all those things and going guns all blaze. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, you've opened so many waterworks in my brain. Like, there's so many things going on, and it would be great to talk with you for another half hour or so. But
we totally can, by the way.
I know there's something else you have coming up, but I just want to go back to one quick thing you said about, and this is something that resonated with me. Like, the second I heard you say it on a podcast, like, I'm doing this for that 7-year-old Elon Musk that needs like the communication training. Do you think about that, like that avatar, that person you want to help, or what do you do to keep that top of mind? Because for me, like, sometimes I'll have these different ideas and it won't stay top of mind, and I'll kind of let go and then I'll come back to it. So what do you do for that?
Yeah, for sure, Dallin. So it's tough, right? You can't always remember it top of mind. Even for me, the 7-year goal isn't always top of mind. But I feel for me, the biggest thing, besides the big 3 priorities that we talked about, but one thing I want to emphasize for people listening to this is it's not about figuring out the perfect answer. Because before, my number 3 was have a net worth of $100 million. Like literally 2 months ago. And my first 2 were solid, but I didn't know what my third one was. So I was like, but but I don't really care. It's like, does it really matter if $100 million? So then when it switched from everyone else, all my other cousins should become multimillionaires and learn the habits, not the money, but the general habits to succeed, I was like, that's way more important. Because it doesn't matter if I pass down money. If they don't have the habits, they're going to waste all of it anyways. So even I'm iterating, right? So a lot of these questions that you're asking me, I still don't have the full answer. And that's okay, because the point is figuring out or trying to, which most of us aren't trying to do. So going back to my life, right, the only thing to keep in mind, Dallin, that helped me speed up time, right, because it's weird. You're talking to a 26-year-old. It seems like to have the wisdom of somebody who's already dead, right? And for me, the punchline is realize who the real enemy is. And the enemy isn't the guy who's cutting you off in traffic. It isn't your significant other who's yelling at you for not putting out the trash that day. It's not the kids who are running around and annoying the crap out of you. The real enemy is time. And it's always ticking on all of us. It's just most people, we choose not to pay attention to that. Whereas me, I literally live my life as if I'm going to die in like 10 years. That's why I have so much urgency in the way that I do things, and why I've been able to accumulate success really quickly. And I still have a long ways to go. But that's really been the perspective. So the question for you and everyone else to think about is when you go back to that avatar, and this is the darker side of personal development that honestly I get way more value from, is who suffers from your inability to take action every day. So for me, with Master Talk, I had every excuse not to start my YouTube channel at 22. But when I thought about that 7-year-old girl, because I know that 7-year-old girl, I coached a lot of them earlier in my career, who do those people have besides me? Like, they're not going to listen to the 55-year-old. They're not going to pay attention to that. It's either I make the videos or nobody else does. So that really pushed me into action. And I think pain is a good driver to take action.
Yeah, there's people that you can reach that others won't be able to reach. I think of like this one teacher in high school that reached me in a certain way that if anybody else, I even had a teacher later who taught the same subject, and it was online, and this was before Zoom. So it was like, we weren't really able, it was like all like over text. And she's like, reach out to me if you have any questions. And it was a nightmare. So everyone check out Master Talk from Brenden. Check out all the other interviews he's on. If you want to jump down the rabbit hole like me, there's literally hundreds. And he was on 300 last year. So we need to talk again because this was thoroughly enjoyable. And I had a lot of fun talking with you. There's a lot you said and stuff to unpack there. But we'll let you get to your next thing, but yeah, just thanks a ton for coming on, man. If you have any other thoughts, then shoot away, but we'll let you go.
I'm just really grateful for you, Dallin. Thanks for doing such a great job doing homework. It's very humbling for me because I'm kind of in this in-between state where people think I'm famous, but I'm not really at all. Like, I'm not like a Gary Vee by any means, and I never want people to think of me that way. So I really appreciate it. It's very humbling for me to know that I'm doing something right with my life. So thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
A lot of your strategy is like spot on. So like we definitely appreciate you, and we'll let you go. But thanks again, man.
Thanks, brother.